Hello everyone and welcome to the Omega Metroid Podcast. My name is Andy Spiteri, joined by Dakota Lasky. Dak, how you doing, my friend? I'm looking forward to today's show with you.
Yeah, man, this is, we're living in a post-Dread world, dude. It's pretty surreal. But, yeah, I'm doing good. I was at Super Smash Con this past weekend, which was a lot of fun. I was down in Virginia, and, yeah, I played some Nick All-Star Brawl. It was a lot of fun. I did pretty decent in that. And I just got back last night, so I took the day off today as well to do a little chilling, a little cleaning, and, getting ready for this episode as well. So, yeah, I'm really, really ready to talk some more Metroid Dread with you, man. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, man. I'm doing good. We kind of jumped the lead a little bit here. We were getting on Discord today. We were going on about the story and stuff like that. So I was supposed to be working, but I was talking about Metroid today. So I'm fired up to be here and to talk about the story. And let's just say it now. There is going to be massive, massive, massive spoilers. So don't listen to this if you haven't finished Metroid Dread. I know that most of us probably have by now, but still, don't listen to this if you haven't finished it. A few things that we should talk about before we actually get to our thoughts about the story itself. First of all, shout out to our buds over at Metroid Database. They are celebrating their 25th anniversary of being a website. 1996 is when that place launched. I remember reading like Metroid fan fiction on there from GameFAQs back in like 2001. So it's pretty surreal to think that website has been around this long. So congrats to Ryan, congrats to the rest of the team over at Metroid Database, and I think they even got a sale going on right now where everything is, I want to say $2.50 off. So shout out to our pals.
Yeah, that's awesome. I was 3 years old when Metroid Database came into existence, so that's actually pretty crazy. Almost as old as I am. And yeah, that's a site that I've been checking for a while as a Metroid fan as well. So 25 years. That's pretty awesome. Congrats to them.
Yeah, big congrats. We didn't talk about this last week because, of course, we were talking about Metroid Dread. And by the way, thank you to everybody that has made that episode our fastest downloaded episode ever. Really appreciate all the love, all the support, everything like that. But we skipped over a pretty big happening in the world of video game land, and that, my friend, I know that you're excited to talk about this, was the journey ending. The final Smash Fighter was announced. I saw the trailer. I'm watching the trailer. There's like hellfire and brimstone going on, and I'm like, what is going on? Is this like Diablo? And I'm thinking to myself, that would actually be kind of cool. Like Diablo would be a solid choice. And then out of the fire comes a Mickey Mouse pendant, and our boy Sora is revealed as the final fighter
not
in
our
Smash.
boy.
I know that you weren't over the moon with
not
it.
Not our boy. Not mine.
Okay, a boy.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I turned the stream off like not too much longer afterward. Like I was like, screw this, man. No, I'm happy that everyone who wanted Sora got Sora finally. I wanted Master Chief. And there are definitely some other characters that I wish had gotten into Smash. Like, I feel like Rayman was a character that should have always been in Smash. And some others, too. But Sora's cool, I guess. Not really, but I'm happy for Sora fans. It was a pretty big deal. And, yeah, Master Chief would have been cool. But Sora, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, you know what? So, on a personal level, I was just like, okay, it's Sora. And I used to play, I played Kingdom Hearts 1, I played Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories, which was that weird card game on the Game Boy Advance. Then I played Kingdom Hearts 2. And then the series got really weird because it was like all the like weird sequels. It was like Kingdom Hearts 2.78 and a half or something like that. And I was like, I don't need this anymore. But I know that Sora won the Smash ballot from a couple years ago. And I have seen a ton of people that for years were really clamoring to have Sora get into Smash. And so for them, I was excited. But yeah, I when I was watching it, I was kind of rooting for Master Chief because I thought that would have been cool. And like, there aren't a lot of like really triple A video game icons that I think aren't in Smash, and I think Chief is definitely a triple A video game icon. So I think that could have been cool. Like I said, when I was watching it, I was like, dude, is this Diablo? And then I was like, actually, that would be like pretty sweet. And then like that didn't happen either. I saw a few of my friends, we were covering this for Zelda Dungeon. They were just like, oh man, is this Dark Souls?
Yeah, I was gonna
And
say
that
I thought it
didn't
was
happen
Dark
as well.
Souls. I was like, no way, Dark Souls. And then I saw the Mickey Mouse icon. I was like, no, because I'm not a Kingdom Hearts fan at all. I definitely knew about it growing up, but I wasn't like kind of, I guess, a game I was really interested in playing, and I didn't really play like Final Fantasy really growing up, nor was I really into Disney. So like, or like Mickey Mouse in particular. I don't know, like I wasn't like dying to play any of those games. I never really did. And then like Kingdom Hearts 3, I feel like wasn't received very well overall. So I was like, oh, I don't know if Sora's really going to happen. But I feel like if Sora was definitely one of like the long shot, like there's no way, but like it would be so sick if it would happen, I guess, for a lot of people kind of characters. So like that's cool. Like there are definitely a lot worse characters they could have put in. So I'm okay with that. But yeah, I was really hoping for Master Chief. That would have been sick. And yeah, it's kind of crazy that that's like the last character for Ultimate. This game's been out for what 3 years, and it's had quite a ride. So many awesome characters. Has to have. I mean, obviously the best Smash roster, but one of the best rosters for like any fighting game ever. Has Ridley, has Banjo, has King K. Rool, has Minecraft Steve. I mean, you really can't be mad. Like there are some.
No.
I mean, Sephiroth's in the game. Like you can't be mad. Like there's so many awesome characters in the roster. So. It's actually crazy to me that it's over in terms of new characters, but it is certainly the ultimate Smash Bros. So I think it ended on a pretty solid note.
It's crazy too, because like it feels like Ultimate, just like it feels like when Smash 4 for Wii U started, the train didn't really stop after that game ended, because it feels like Ultimate came like right after it. So now it really feels like there's going to be this big gap, and it's like, man, like I loved having Nintendo Directs like kick off with like the latest Smash fighter, and now that's probably not going to happen for at least another couple of years.
Yeah, exactly. We're gonna have directs with no mention of Smash whatsoever, and we've had that in the past, of course. But eventually, we got one where we got some Smash, and I mean, I know people kind of hate the speculation, people kind of getting crazy with asking for their characters, but I don't know. I love all that, and people getting excited and finally seeing the reveal, and obviously there are some really awesome reactions for people who are fans of these characters. I certainly had a crazy reaction when Ridley was revealed, when Banjo was revealed. Like, those are some of my favorite characters ever, so... I mean, Ultimate really has, like, a character for almost anybody, I think. Like, certainly not everyone can be, made happy. Geno fans, sorry, rip, but... Smash 4 had some really, I mean, even back to like Brawl with like Snake was such a crazy reveal, Sonic was a crazy reveal, and then we like Smash 4, we got Cloud and Bayonetta, which was awesome, Ryu, which was great, but like this game really like rounded it out with a lot of characters that also should definitely be in Smash. So overall, I'm really happy with how it turned out, and even though I didn't get Master Chief, it is what it is. I got Ridley, I got some others that I'm happy with, and Ultimate's a really sick game, so.
Yeah, I think so. Like, even if Sora didn't really hit, I was kind of thinking back and reflecting on this, and I was like, man, when Ridley got announced, like, I just lost my mind. Like, that was so awesome. And I feel like there was an announcement like that. Like, every fan, I feel like, had at least one announcement of a character where they were like, oh my god, this is incredible. No matter if it was Banjo, or if it was Joker, or, I don't know, maybe there's probably some Min fans out there that lost their mind when she got announced, but... There was truly something for everyone.
All 10 ARMS players were just absolutely ecstatic about that one.
Oh, man. Well, we could definitely agree on the fact that in the next Smash Bros. Game, Raven Beak has got to be a playable character. Oh, yeah,
I was about to say, like, that's the character that it should have been, not Sora. It should have been Raven Beak, man. I mean,
oh my god.
This is a Marvel character. This character is absolutely insane. The second I beat Metroid Dread, I'm like, this is who the last Smash character should have been. It would have been an instant top tier. That would have been so sick.
Oh god. Okay, well, I'm fired up. I'm ready to talk about it. I'm gonna give one more spoiler warning. We are going hard into the entire story of Metroid Dread. This is one of the most anticipated aspects of the game, and we're going to talk about whether it delivered. We're going to give a synopsis of what happened so that we can have full context, and we are going to pick it apart. So this is your last warning. If you do not want this game completely and utterly spoiled for you, turn back and come back later when you've beat Metroid Dread.
All right.
All right. If you're still here, then let's absolutely do it. So, I feel like maybe to start us off, Dak, I should maybe just give a brief synopsis of the plot of Metroid Dread so that we can just kind of go from there, because I feel like the plot actually itself doesn't take that long to explain. So why don't I do that, and then we'll just immediately start with the big elephant in the room right after, because I know that you have a lot to say. But the plot of Metroid Dread: Samus lands on the planet ZDR. Of course, she has got transmissions that there might be X-parasites on that planet. She gets there and is immediately attacked by this Chozo, who we would learn is called Raven Beak. Raven Beak lets her live for some reason, but takes her to the depths of the planet. Something seems to have awakened inside of Samus when this attack goes down. So you progress through the game, and you eventually arrive at a cutscene with a living, breathing Chozo called Quiet Robe. And he tells you that the X actually... let me back up. He tells you that the events of Samus Returns that you see in the Chozo memories are basically what we thought they were, where the Chozo scientists, who are the Thoha tribe, I believe that's how you say their names?
Yeah, I think
the Thoha tribe created the Metroids to eradicate the X on SR-388. And after the X were eradicated, they were going to, I guess, get rid of the Metroids because they were going out of control. At that point, Raven Beak and the Makin Chozo tribe turned on the Thohas and basically eliminated all of them except for Quiet Robe, because he can control Metroids, as most Thoha can, and took him back to their home planet of ZDR. Once they got there, however, they realized that one of the Chozo soldiers was actually an X in disguise, so Raven Beak had to deal with that. His planet is completely destroyed. By the time that he had that under control and under wraps, Samus had already eliminated all of the Metroids. So Raven Beak has a plan. He's going to lure Samus back to ZDR to extract the Metroid DNA from her blood so that he can recreate the Metroids and use them for his own nefarious gains. As the game goes on, Samus eventually gets to the top of the planet. She's talking to Adam and realizes that Adam has actually been Raven Beak this whole entire time. It blows him up, and then gets into a final confrontation with Raven Beak. At this point, we realize that Samus's Metroid DNA is allowing her to suck the life out of things, so they have this really awesome fight. She turns into a full-blown Metroid and destroys Raven Beak. We should also mention, too, that the X were, in fact, trapped in the planet ZDR. They were in the core, so they end up getting released, and Samus destroys them. She destroys Raven Beak. She destroys the planet, and there we go. Did I miss anything?
Yeah, I mean, you missed the big thing at the end, the whole exposition dump before the last boss battle.
Well, okay. I figured we'd talk about that a little bit more.
Okay. Yeah, otherwise, I think I mean, there are a couple things that were, there's some experimentation going on the planet, and Samus has to deal with that. Yeah, but otherwise, that's pretty much the gist of it all.
Okay, so I skipped over this at the end, but we do find out that at the end of the game, Samus is revealed to essentially have been bioengineered by the Chozo, which is actually something that you and I were talking about a year ago on the podcast. I remember we were saying that maybe Samus is 100 years old or something like that. But
is that what it was? Is it that she was bioengineered? I thought it was just that she was, given the Chozo DNA, and they were showing us that, right?
Well, that was my takeaway. Maybe there's room for interpretation there. There definitely could be room for interpretation there, because we have the story of Samus with her parents and their settlement getting destroyed by Ridley, but I'm not entirely sure that the games themselves have ever made that canon. Although I feel like Super Smash Bros. Did. With its
no, that's that. Wait, are you saying that the Chozo created Samus entirely, and she wasn't born as an actual human? No, I don't think that's what is being said there, unless I completely missed that. But for my interpretation, she was, exactly as it was previously. She was saved by the Chozo, and then while she was with the Chozo, they put her in this big, tank, and they gave her the Chozo DNA, and that DNA came from Raven Beak. They didn't make her out of some culture of bacteria, or whatever, some human cells.
Either way, so Samus Samus is injected with both Thoha DNA and Makin DNA. Thoha so that she has the, I guess, the spiritual connection to the power suit that allows her to use the power suit, and the Makin DNA so that she can be this badass warrior. And so we find that out, and Raven Beak is, I guess, quote unquote. I think he says that Samus is his daughter, and I'm thinking that's more in the figurative sense that she has his DNA. But that was certainly a big point of the plot as well. And then Samus just literally sucks his energy away. So yeah, let's start off. Let's run down the list. Let's talk about just in general if the story met the mark. Let's talk about Raven Beak. Let's talk about Adam, Quiet Robe, the EMMIs, the Metroids. But first, let's talk about the big elephant in the room. Dak, I'll turn the floor over to you. The Galactic Federation. We were talking about it a couple weeks ago, and I was saying that I did hope that there was some resolution, not resolution, but I did hope that they were present in this game in some way or some shape, and they're really not. That story thread from Fusion is left dangling. There's really nothing that is resolved there. I think that I'm not as critical on that as you are probably going to be, and I'll tell you why after, but yeah, I mean, the floor is yours. I know that you were looking forward to that.
I mean, that's the reason I wanted Dread in the first place, you know? Like, obviously I wanted more 2D Metroid, that's cool and all, but the big reason I wanted Metroid Dread was I wanted a sequel to Metroid Fusion, specifically a direct follow-up to the events of Fusion. And, you know, we've talked with people over the past couple weeks of, well, did Fusion actually end on a cliffhanger? Was it a mistranslation? Was, you know, is there actually any kind of real beef between Samus and the Federation? Is it actually resolved at the end of that game? From my interpretation, I think this, many others as well, is from what I could tell that even if, like, this was, like, some kind of small sect of the Federation, like, some small group within it, you know, it's still the Federation being involved. And Samus, you know, defied orders, she destroyed a whole station, destroyed a planet, whatever, blah, blah. At the very least, even if she doesn't get court-martialed, she's not a fugitive, whatever it is, there was no acknowledgement of, like, those events at all. You know, there was no, like, Samus, like, briefing on that, like, anything. And I don't need, like, a whole, like, series of cutscenes or monologuing or anything. But, like, there was no explanation of, like, what happened after that. Like, was Samus really on the run? Like, was that group within the Federation dealt with? Like, did she have any repercussions? What were they? If she didn't, why not? Like, there was nothing. It kind of just, like, completely moves on. And that's, like, I think my biggest issue with this, because the Fusion story, or the Metroid story, by the time Fusion happens, is very much involved with the Samus, the X-Parasites, and the Galactic Federation. And while the Chozo are certainly an influence, they're very background and they're not very, like, integral to the actual active story. So I felt like it was weird that all of a sudden Dread is like, all right, we're wrapping this all up, and it's very Chozo involved. I'm like, I don't, like, a lot of this story in this game I think would have been better for Metroid 6. And we got the Samus Federation stuff in Dread. Because I didn't think there was a need to, like, kind of, like, hotshot all of this Chozo stuff immediately. It didn't feel like Fusion was building to all of this. And we talked about this beforehand, or before, you know, before we recorded this, and even a couple days ago, where this feels very much like a sequel to Samus Returns and the Chozo Memories. And not really, story-wise, a direct sequel to Fusion. And I was very much looking forward to a direct sequel to Fusion. I wanted to see that Samus vs. Federation thing. I wanted to see if that was going to escalate. I felt like Fusion ended on a cliffhanger that was going in that direction, where Samus would be, you know, having to deal with some consequence that would happen. And they could have still gone into this Chozo stuff too, and I don't know, it felt weird that the Federation is so completely absent in this game entirely, when they were such a big deal in Fusion and, you know, even in Other M. Like the past two games in the chronology are very, you know, focused on the suspicious stuff that the Galactic Federation are doing, and their, like, need to, like, you know, control these bioweapons. Samus was essentially, you know, or they were willing to sacrifice Samus to get to the SAX and preserve it in Fusion. And in Dread, Samus has, like, no hesitancy to working with the Federation, regardless of the fact that she's probably the only one, and eventually is the only one that can deal with the X on ZDR. She still has, like, no hesitancy. Like, yeah, with the Federation, you know, didn't really care if I was going to die or not, as long as they got that awesome bioweapon. So, like, I don't know. There was no, like, mention of the Federation at all. Felt so weird to me. And yeah, I wanted that direct follow-up from Fusion. I thought it ended on a cliffhanger. That's one of the things I loved about Fusion. I was like, oh, it's setting up this crazy, escalation between Samus and the Federation. What's going to happen next? And it just goes in a different direction.
Right. Yeah. I think that everything you said is like very accurate, very valid, and I can when I was playing and got to the end, one of my first thoughts was like Dak is going to be disappointed because I think like you just said, like we were talking about, this actually isn't really a sequel to Fusion at all. It's really a sequel to Samus Returns, and that probably makes sense, I guess, because Mercury Steam developed Samus Returns, but there, the other than the X, I don't know how to word this properly because the events that happen in Fusion are very important to this game. The X Parasite, the Metroid DNA, but yeah, the Galactic Federation isn't a factor at all, and I do think that is a little bit disappointing. Now, if you were to ask me what I think is the more compelling and interesting story, Samus versus the Galactic Federation, or Samus kind of dealing with the Dark Chozo that we saw at the end of Samus Returns, I would probably tell you that I think it's Samus versus the Chozo. And I, on that note, I was very happy with what we did get in Dread. But I do think that it wouldn't have hurt, and I think you said this in our Discord deck, to like even have like a line at the beginning where like, Adam could have said like, tensions are still high with the Galactic Federation, but you are the only one that can do this, so we have to put aside our differences and work together. And I think it could have been a line as
that would have
simple
been
that.
like, it wouldn't have been great, but it would have been something. Like, I really wanted a true conflict between the Samus and the Federation. Like, I feel like that's what this has been building up towards. Like, you saw what happened in Other M, you saw what happened in Fusion. I'm like, come on, like, this has to be it. Like, the Chozo stuff could have waited, like, there was no need to do all of this. This could have all happened after the Samus vs. Federation stuff. It doesn't feel like, you're right, like, other than the X and like the Metroid DNA stuff, this game really has nothing to do with Fusion. Like, sure, like the core X show up and you have some like familiar stuff from it, but it's just like familiar stuff showing up from Fusion. It didn't really feel like the actual plot of Fusion made like a massive difference in the end in terms of like influencing this game. I think that also has to do with the fact that we don't really get the real Adam as well, which we'll get into, or maybe we did, I don't know, but like
No, we'll get into
we'll get into that, but like the Federation stuff, whether it was the better choice or not, the more enjoyable or potentially creative choice or not, as far as I was concerned, Fusion set up that particular path storytelling wise, and for it to just go into this Chozo stuff, it feels like so much stuff in this game is introduced for the first time and has nothing to do with Fusion. And like, why? Like, there was so much stuff they could have easily followed up upon. If there's a suspicious part of the Federation or whatever, like, go into that more. I'd love to see that. Like, the EMMI stuff would have been perfect for this too. Like, the EMMIs could still be involved, and they can still involve SDR as well. I mean, I remember when we came up with our ideas for Metroid 5, my idea was also like finding a Chozo planet that she was trying to get away. Like, the elements of the story I wanted are here. Like, she could have still gone to ZDR and maybe found safe haven from the Federation with the Chozo there, and then she finally figures out that some of the Chozo aren't that good, blah blah blah. Like, that was all part of my idea for Metroid 5 a year ago, whatever we did that episode earlier this year, whatever it was. And they have all those elements, but they don't use them in the way I expected, and I don't think in the best way. Like, the EMMIs are a cool idea, but like, they were meant to go after the X. Like, okay, that's fine, but like, having all this Chozo stuff didn't feel at all set up from Fusion. And I think this game would have worked a lot better is if it followed up on all the Federation stuff from Fusion, and then the ending of the game incorporated, or like the middle point to ending of the game had like a subplot that brought back the Chozo stuff and built towards the next 2D Metroid, which then could have done all of this Chozo stuff. Because for the most part, I think as its own standalone story, I think Dread is fine. I think a lot of the events that happen in the game are cool. Like, I like a lot of the Samus versus Dark Chozo stuff, but I just didn't think it was the right time to do it. I think it was more appropriate to follow up on Fusion directly. I don't think inherently a lot of the stuff that happens in Dread is bad. It's just not, I think, the proper follow-up to the previous game, which is what I was looking forward to.
Mm-hmm. And I respect that. I completely get what you're saying, and I don't disagree with it either. I think that maybe the saving grace for this is like, you can still do that story, but for whatever reason they just decided that this Chozo story needed to take precedence, and maybe maybe they needed to have Samus with that Metroid DNA to further establish that she's like a fugitive, and maybe after like the Metroid DNA acts the way that it does on ZDR is what pushes that over the line. I don't know. We'll talk more about that when we pitch our ideas for Metroid 6. But I think my takeaway is like they can still do that story, but I also do wonder if the story that you want was Other M and it
Yeah,
just
we
was
talked about this.
bundled.
I
Yeah.
mean, it does. I mean, no, it isn't because like that is still building. Like Other M's is still building towards that final conflict with Samus versus the Federation, much like Fusion was. Like that, Other M does not have that. Other M is not Samus versus the Federation, really. It is in a way, but like not in the conflict that I was really hoping for. And
Right.
like in the same token, it doesn't now make sense to me to like do it after Dread because you have the events of Other M where Samus goes into it with no problems with the Federation. By the time the game ends, they're clearly suspicious. So one of the main reasons I don't like Other M is because it makes the beginning of Fusion not make sense because then she immediately is working with the Federation again at the beginning of that game. And then it happens again in this game where by the end of Fusion, the Federation are clearly sus and need to be dealt with. And in Dread, they're on good terms again. Like it's the same thing happening twice. And now I'm like, ugh, the opportunity to do this story was now, because now if they do it in the next game, is Samus at this like does she not know that they're suspicious? Like now I'm like, what is she aware of? Like I don't get it. Like that's what I would have liked, some kind of acknowledgement of like, okay, Samus is willing to do this mission, but she is still keeping in the back of her head like, okay, this is the Federation, they're super sketchy. And even then, that still wouldn't even be enough for me because like the Federation were willing to let her die, and like in order to save the X Parasite on the BSL. The fact that she is just like, all right, let's go on this next mission, no big deal. I'm like, what? This was a huge story in Fusion. I'm like, it's very disappointing to me that Dread like glosses over that.
If Samus is the only one that can stop the X Parasite, which we know that she is, she's going to do it regardless of if the Federation orders her to or not. But I do think that I mean I do agree with you. I think that a line acknowledging the Galactic Federation and their motivations.
I still think that would have been lame though, because like it's just a single line. Like I really think at the end of Fusion,
it would have been something though.
It would have been, yeah, sure, it would have been something. But you know, I was expecting after Fusion that Samus would legitimately be some kind of fugitive or criminal, like she would be trying to get away from the Federation. And in this game, like she's still working with them. I don't know, like even if she is the only one that could deal with the X, like. It would have been better if, for example, like let's say she's on the run from the Federation and she intercepts the message that the Federation get, right? In this game, like the Federation received the video message with the X Parasites from ZDR, and she shows it and they show it to Samus and she's like, "Oh, I got to do this." What if instead the Federation were sent that video while they're chasing Samus, and Samus intercepts it, and she's like, "Well, I'm on the run from the Federation, but I got to do this. I'm the only one who can do it." That would have been great because then she gets the ZDR. She's trying to deal with the X Parasites, and the Federation. They could have had it in this other Dread or whatever, other Dread. Jesus. They could have had it like the EMMIs could have just been straight up sent to take care of Samus, right? Like that would have fulfilled the exact same role they do in the current Dread, but instead the Federation are sending it after Samus to take care of her from the events of Fusion. Meanwhile, she's on ZDR taking care of the X Parasites because she knows she's the only one that can do it. Literally, the assets to do that are in the game already, but they didn't go that manner. But like that would have made way more sense to me than Samus just being like, "Well, I'm cool with the Federation still for some reason, but I'm the only one who can do it, so I'm going to go." Like, they could have done that other way where the Federation are going after her, but despite that, like, she has to deal with both things. She has to deal with the EMMIs while she's also trying to deal with the threat on the ZDR, blah, blah, which is exactly what we get, but in the current game, but the story doesn't match, you know? Like, so, I don't know. I think that would have been a way better route than what we got currently.
Yeah, I don't, again, I don't think that anything of what you're saying is, like, not true, not valid. I think that like all your points are very valid. I think like for me, I would have been satisfied telling this story, but just acknowledging that things aren't on great terms with the Galactic Federation, because I do think that story can still happen. Yeah, your idea for her just intercepting the message sounds great, and then the game can happen like as
That's
is.
what I'm saying.
I
Like
think even that
it's
would have been
literally
fine.
would be like almost exactly what we have now, but it would still follow up on, and that's literally what I thought we were gonna get. Like when we saw some of those aspects of the game before launch, I was like, oh, this is perfect. Like Samus is on the run, she's gonna get this mission. She's like, I mean, how many times in the Metroid series has been a message been intercepted and Samus has to go take care of it? You know, Metroid Prime, she gets this SOS for it, and she's like, oh, I gotta go take care of it. Gets into this whole embroiled in this whole thing. Like it would have made so much sense. And like even at the beginning of the game, Adam, like we still haven't gotten into that part, but like at this point, like the beginning, we know that like that's pretty much the real Adam. And Adam's like, oh, like the risk outweighs the reward or whatever for this bounty, but like doesn't it all like go into what he means? Does he mean because they're dealing with the Federation? Does he mean because the literal bounty is like what you would get from it is too low? Because ZDR is too dangerous? Like that stuff just like isn't explained. And I get that people like the thing about Metroid where not everything's explained. You don't need everything handed to you, but I would like some explanation for the important stuff, especially if it follows up from Fusion. And considering this is an ending to the current story, I think this is the game where you really do need to explicitly explain stuff because it's an ending, right? Like it's a resolution, it's a climax and resolution. And
Well, hold on. To be fair, this is an ending to the Metroid saga.
yeah, no,
They
no,
were very
yeah.
clear to use like the Metroid saga, so you can still have your Galactic Federation saga. Let's just say like that can still happen, but
I guess.
as a way to kind of like put a bow on the Metroids were created on planet SR388. They were used by the space pirates. They were used as weapons. They're extinct now. Samus is a Metroid. I think that is still a story with a lot of legs, and I think that the Galactic Federation could be a big part in that
yeah.
going forward. So
I mean, look, if they do it now, I mean, I guess they could. I gotta be honest. You know, this game is not like in that respect a full package game for me. I mean, we haven't even gotten to the music yet, which I think is another thing entirely. But this, like, what I really wanted out of this game was for it to hit all the marks on story, and this was the big one for me. Like everything else in the story, I really don't think I think it's fine, like, in its own standalone story. But like in actually following up on Fusion, which is my favorite 2D Metroid, and the big reason why one of the big reasons I love Fusion was like it was setting up another game I was expecting, and this didn't really follow up on it. Yeah, when you said I'd be disappointed, I definitely was. There were times in this game where I definitely popped off for some big reveals, especially ones that were related to to Fusion, like when the Core X were revealed. I was like, oh, that's awesome. But like that's just like a little throwback. That's not like a huge plot beat or anything. So I don't know. I was really hoping for something a little different. And at the end of the day, like, yeah, I guess they could do that story in the next game. I don't think it would make very much sense. I think it would very much put into question Samus's trusting of other people. Like, she's like Sting and constantly reteaming with Ric Flair, who's going to betray her over and over again. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, eventually, I'm like, she has to kind of stop holding forward and mashing A and kind of think, and that's another thing I'd like to get into later, Samus's character overall. But that was another thing that made me kind of be a bit dissuaded on the story. But we can get into that later.
yeah, I mean, I guess I still think that could happen. I think practically speaking, I mean, I do agree with you. I think that this plotline with the Galactic Federation should have been acknowledged. I don't think it. I personally didn't necessarily want it to be the crux of like the entire game, like the Samus versus Federation, unless it was like, I don't know, something that was a bit more fun, I guess the word I'm going to say, but maybe that's not the right word. But I didn't really want Samus mowing down a bunch of like galactic marine troopers or whatever. Like I did want her fighting aliens and stuff like that. So I was and I was really excited to learn about the Chozo, and we'll talk about that. But like, so I do think that you're right though. I think that should have been addressed. I actually think, practically speaking, though, I think a Metroid Fusion sequel is like, or rather, a remake of Metroid Fusion is inevitable. I really and truly do, especially now that they've got this engine. Especially now that we've seen, and in some ways, this almost is like a sequel or a remake in its own right, because you do have the X.
Yeah.
But I think that remake is inevitable. I think it's going to happen. I wouldn't be surprised at all if there's some extra content, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if like, you know, it kind of went the Samus Returns route where like, okay, now we're setting up the next thing, and like we're going to pay off what we revealed in this Metroid Fusion remake, and it's going to influence the next series of games. I don't think
That would be
that's
so
like a completely
convoluted
unfeasible
then.
possibility.
That'd be so weird to like do the Samus Returns remake and then that influences the game after Fusion and then the Fusion remake would influence the game after Dread. Like that's just so like why? Like and I don't need Samus mowing down Federation Marines, but like she could have fought the Emmys, but instead of the Emmys going after the X, they're specifically to go after Samus, right? They could have fought she could have fought Federation robots and stuff like that. Like she did in Fusion. I don't need her running around mowing down humans or anything. Like there's a middle ground there, but I do think I would have liked that direct conflict. And I think a Fusion remake is probably likely. You can tell they very much wanted to make a Fusion remake where they just outright use the Fusion like X Parasite mechanic, and you're just like, oh, you could tell they very much just wanted to do the Fusion remake at first. But I think it worked out in the end that they ended up doing Dread. I think we'll probably get a Super and Fusion remake eventually, and I wouldn't be surprised, if they use this engine. I think it'd be perfect for it, and I could see it being like a very supplemental kind of pair of releases in the next few years, or not few years, maybe through the decade or whatever, that come out on the Switch or whatever console, whatever it is. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe they could still follow up on it, but I think the assets were there to do it. Like you don't need her fighting real Marines, but you could have still had the Emmys go against her. I just think the setup could have been a little different to make it more Federation focused, like at least acknowledging what happened in Fusion, but you could still have her fighting the Emmys and exploring ZDR and dealing with the X Parasites and all of that. You didn't have to like not have the Federation at all.
Fair, yeah, that's fair. I do think that there's still meat on the bone too, by the way, of why the Emmys are like replicating some of Samus's powers. Maybe the Federation is building those to replace.
Or weren't
Samus,
they given
as it
those
were.
powers by Raven Beak or the Chozo? I thought that was what happened.
Maybe I might have just missed that, but either
I don't
way,
know, I could be
I think
wrong.
that I like that idea where like maybe the Federation's just building these machines so that eventually they have something that can just like eliminate Samus.
Yeah, why
I still
wouldn't
think that
they?
there's meat on the bone
Yeah.
for that story. But
I guess.
anyways, we know the story that you wanted that we did not get. So let's talk about the actual story that we did get and judge that. And I guess just you've talked about your feelings about the story, as it pertains to being a sequel to Fusion, just like in a bubble. I think that the story for this game is actually awesome. Like as a sequel to Samus Returns, as a sequel to like all like the Metroid dealings that kind of went on throughout the entire run of the series. I really thought the Metroid DNA stuff was like really cool. Particularly at the end when you get the hyper beam and the Metroid suit. I really love that. I thought that it was awesome to like see a living, breathing Chozo, and especially to fight one. Raven Beak reminds me of like Bane. Like he's this big, imposing villain that we're not used to seeing Batman get his ass kicked, but like Bane does it, and I feel like this is basically the same thing with Samus, who she's such a badass, but there's this other bigger badass, and he is flexing all over her. So that was really cool. I can understand the disappointment, of course, about the Federation, and like I said, I think that's valid. But I was like, generally speaking, and we'll get into certain aspects here, but like generally speaking, I was like really into this story. I thought that it was really cool.
Yeah, aside from the Federation stuff, I agree. I think a lot of the Chozo stuff was really cool, like the main story. I would say it was hit or miss for me in a lot of ways, because I think like Raven Beak is a really cool villain. Really awesome Chozo, and obviously follows up really well from the Samus Returns Chozo memories. Really intimidating force, really cool. I loved all of that. I think having Raven Beak be like the direct like source of like the Malkin DNA Samus gets, also fine with that. I guess I don't know if they made it seem this way to me entirely. Like I'm not sure if they meant it to be that like there are only two Chozo tribes, like the Malkin and the Thoho or Thorha, or that they were just two of many. Because from my understanding, there are many Chozo tribes that were spread all across the galaxy, right? And maybe I was wrong on that, but that was my understanding of the Chozo up until this point. So in this game, it kind of implies that there are just two kinds in general, which I don't know. Like that's kind of just simplistic to me. Like, oh, there's the good Chozo and they're good and they are scientific, and there's the bad Chozo and they're warriors and all. I'm like, it kind of dumbs down the Chozo, I think, to me, where like before that it kind of felt like, okay, the Chozo could be really many kinds of things, because there are all sorts of tribes all across the stars, and they could, be good or bad or in the middle and have all different kinds of stuff. And this kind of felt like it kind of amalgamated it all to just two main tribes. Like there's the good, with the good Chozo, the ones that were on Prime, like there were no bad Chozo there, just only good ones. I don't know, like it just, were they a completely different tribe that weren't the Thoha or the Makin? So like that kind of stuff, I was like, okay. Like this was stuff that just being introduced now at the end of all this like saga, I guess. Okay, whatever. But like it's still fine. Like I thought it was cool. Like Raven Beak being like the source of Samus's Makin DNA. I think that's fine. And like I'm your father. I guessing the ending of this this game. Where I'm like, okay, that's crazy.
That was awesome. Come on.
Yeah, no, I mean that was like oh, okay. I think my biggest thing with that is there was no resolution to the game. Like they just dropped a ton of exposition on you at the end, and they're like, okay, boss battle, okay, escape sequence, okay, credits, and there's no like end cutscene to like give you a second to be like, okay, like take, or like you don't even get a chance to take it all in. The only reason I actually caught a lot of that info in that cutscene was because I died a couple of times in the boss battle, and I just watched the cutscene again. Like they just drop all this info on you at the end, and there's no like resolution to the story, which I wish there was. But I did like Raven Beak's like in the Chozo's active role in the story. I thought that was awesome.
Let's talk about Raven Beak specifically for a second.
Love all that.
But to touch on something that you just said, I don't know. Maybe I didn't pay attention in the way that I needed to, but I didn't actually get that impression that there was only the two Chozo tribes. I just kind of thought that they were talking about two Chozo tribes, and those were just
I mean maybe
the
I was
two
wrong.
that they happened to be talking about. But like I never kind of got the idea that there were only two Chozo tribes.
Yeah, I could have been wrong on that. I wasn't sure. I was
right.
I maybe I need to go back and be a little more observatory on it, or observant, not observatory. But yeah, maybe it just wasn't those two tribes, but I kind of at some point was like, are these the only two? Like because I don't know. I guess I maybe they were just more explicit on that. I missed it, so maybe I'm wrong.
To me, it makes sense that there's like multiple Chozo tribes.
Yeah.
I feel like if the Thoha could control the Metroids, and like there's really only two tribes, and like tons of Chozo would have been able to control the Metroids, and they probably wouldn't have got as out of hand as they did. But maybe that's just
that's
me
what I'm
and my own
thinking.
headcanon.
Like like if we're like all the Chozo, like if there were other Chozo tribes, they had nothing to do with the Metroids. It was just these two. Like that kind of made it feel hard to believe, because like are these the same Chozo that were involved with Zebus' entire time? Were they also involved in the Prime series, and on Talon 4? So, like, were they the same Chozo that were in contact with the Luminoth? Like, now I'm like, I mean...
In my headcanon, all those guys are, like, separate. Like, they're their own Chozo, but maybe only the Chozo of SR388, which are the Thoha, are able to control the Metroids. Like, that, I feel like that makes sense to me. Because I think Quiet Robe kind of says, like, they called in the Makin to help with this Metroid problem, because even they were getting out of control. So, yeah. I feel like that makes sense to me.
Guess
But
that
anyways,
makes, yeah.
Raven Beak, dude. I feel like so way back when we were talking about Metroid Dread, when it was like first announced, one of the things that I wanted was like a new adversary, or like a new character, like a new, like just a new personality in Metroid beyond Samus and Ridley and like Dark Samus and Mother Brain. And I feel like Raven Beak really delivered. He's like this big, imposing, badass dude. He's a cool Chozo. He's got the Sephiroth one wing. I thought that his plan made like pretty good sense. He lured Samus in and was going to extract her DNA with the EMMI. I was like, okay, that makes sense to me. Dude is lusting after power. He wants the Metroids. I was down with that. The boss battle is... I think that you could make a real strong case that is the best final boss in Metroid. I loved this dude, man. He was really what I wanted, like a new character and a new force added to Metroid. So I was really high on Raven Beak. Cool guy.
Yeah, he could use a better name, but which I could say about most things in Metroid Dread. But yeah, he's a really awesome boss. If he's not the best, end of Metroid boss or final boss, then it's probably, Proteus Ridley. But Yeah, he's really sick. Awesome design. Really wish he was in Smash. He's just like crazy strong and fast and has these awesome attacks. It's a really like a awesome like three phase, I believe, boss fight. And like yeah, like we learned about this character for the first time in Dread, but he's obviously the character we see in the Samus Returns Chozo memories, so I think that's fine. I like if you're if I'm accepting that, okay, this is going to be very Chozo based, which it is, then like yeah, I think this is us meeting like the head of this like dark Chozo faction and getting to square off. And even if that like the overly dramatic like I'm also your father thing is incorporated, I still think it was overall a really strong character, awesome character, and a really cool I guess addition to the Chozo roster, I guess, right? Like I've always thought the Chozo were a really cool aspect, and like that's the thing is that I'm conflicted because I like all of this Chozo stuff, like it's not that I don't want it. I just wanted the Federation stuff too, or first. But I love all of this,
Sure.
for the most part, all of the Chozo stuff, like how it explains more of that, and we get to see like Chozo architecture and then building stuff in the background, though that's not entirely followed up upon either. Like that stuff is cool, and I really like that. So, and Raven Beak is a big part of why I like that. Really interesting character, really awesome design, and is a really awesome like, or I guess like the culmination of that like Dark Chozo thing that we've been kind of waiting on, seeing what was going to go on with that with the past few years. So I like that was what we got. Raven makes a really awesome character.
And to give 2 cents on a couple topics too that I saw some people in our Discord talking about. I saw the question of like, why did Raven Beak allow Samus to live in their first encounter? And I think the answer there is to awaken her Metroid DNA. The game gives you an explanation that the Thoha are able to control Metroids, and that Metroids now recognize the Machkin as enemies. And I surmise that is because Quiet Robe, as the last Thoha alive, is saying like, hey, these Machkin guys are bad, so if there's any Metroids left in the world, go get them. So Ravenbeak knows this, and he is luring Samus in to awaken her Metroid DNA to get it. So that's why he let her live. And yeah, the whole I saw somebody kind of making fun of the father thing or whatever, and like I feel like that was cool. I don't know. Maybe that's just me, but like Samus has got his DNA inside of her. Like I was just like, yeah, that's sick. Like I love that.
I think it was kind of how it was presented, because I think I'm totally okay with that. Like obviously, if she's got Chozo DNA in her, like it has to come from somebody, right? So like we learn who that somebody was, and that's totally okay with me. I just think it's dropped on you in such a quick fashion. It does kind of come off as a bit like, I don't know if overly dramatic or like cliche or cheesy are like the right words. I don't know what it is, because I didn't necessarily feel that way, but like I did feel like I was like, whoa, wait, what? Like, what? Okay. And then you move on, you just go right into the boss fight, and then the game ends, and it's never touched upon again. Like that's kind of the presentation of it, I think maybe is what might have set people back a bit, because it's just, it doesn't come out of nowhere, because I do think it was inevitable. We were going to learn how she got her Chozo DNA, but I do think it's such like a big thing that like hits you, and then you're like, oh, okay, no time to kind of absorb that, because now you have a big boss fight to take care of, and then you have an escape sequence, and then like there's really no time to kind of take that in. And I think that kind of moment needs that. Like it really does need that moment of like, oh, like you need to feel the impact of that instead of just being like rushed on to the next thing. It's like watching Impact, and they have a really solid match, but you got to cut to the back for a promo, with whoever. That was like every TNA episode. So like that's like it's kind of that's how I felt with not only this moment, but with a bunch of moments in this game actually, where it's kind of just like, okay, next thing, time to move on. No time to think about that. Next thing. And it didn't mean that there were a lot of cool things in the game, but you didn't always get the time to really take it in and be like, whoa, like wow, and really absorb it. So I think that's part of the reason, maybe why. That's my speculation. Maybe why people might have been like kind of clowning on it a bit, but overall I think it makes sense and worked for me. I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, I thought that it was cool, and like I don't know, I thought that like the idea that Samus was like engineered in that way, not engineered like built from scratch like I suggested earlier, which I still think could be true by the way, but just like enhanced or mod. She's got like the Steve Rogers like super soldier serum in her. I thought that was like super cool, and like it would be like if that super serum came from like this really evil dude. So
Yeah,
I thought that was really
I
cool.
agree. Yeah.
Of course, we can't talk about Raven Beak without talking about Adam, because as we learn at the end of the game, they are one and the same. And I will say that I can be on board with people who criticize this aspect of the plot, because I thought that she was talking to Adam the entire game except for the last cutscene where she talks, or where she blows up Adam's interface. And I was like, okay, well, like that was obviously Adam for the whole game, right? And I'm replaying it and I was like, well, maybe not. Like, I guess that doesn't make sense because he never calls her lady. He never, he's very robotic, which I mean,
Yeah.
obviously he's a robot. Of course he's robotic, but you know what I mean? Like, he doesn't really have much personality. So I guess that when you put it in the context, because I know that you had some issues with Adam and his characterization. So I guess when you put it in the context of like, it's actually Raven Beak the whole game, it makes sense that he feels off and he doesn't feel like he's Adam.
Yeah. That.
Because at the very beginning of the game, he talks like Adam.
Yes.
He calls her lady. He's kind of he talks like Adam. And when you're actually on the planet, not necessarily so much, but I do think that the game could have done a better job at like maybe dropping you hints that like this Adam guy, something's wrong with Adam. Like this is not the Adam that I know, because Samus is she's just talking to Adam and she doesn't seem to suspect anything. So I was like, okay, well, if she doesn't suspect anything, I don't suspect anything.
Yeah, see, I'm conflicted about this too, because I actually think the execution on this is fine, because I got, when they revealed that it wasn't Adam the whole time, I was like, oh, okay, like, that makes sense, because the whole time I was like, is this just, like, not good writing? Like, does Adam just, like, talk like this now? And now I'm like, okay, it wasn't the real Adam, but, like, that's fine with me. I think my issue was that I wanted the real Adam the whole game. Because you're right, like, I guess he's an AI, he doesn't really have much personality, but he kind of does. Like, at the beginning of Fusion, he doesn't really, but by the end of Fusion, he is more humanized and characterized.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
And then I wanted more, and I know, like, you're obviously not a huge Adam fan, but we've talked about this on the show before. Like, a big part of the reason I like Fusion was I like that Samus and Adam relationship as, colleagues and friends and whatever that is, and CO and whatnot. And I wanted more of that in Dread after what we got in Fusion, because by the end of Fusion, we had a different, both characters had grown through the events of the game. And now I wanted more of those grown characters. And instead we got it like at the beginning of the game, because I guess that was the real Adam. But I wanted more of Adam through the actual game. And instead, because Raven Beak was Adam, essentially we get this like watered down Adam that's not the real one, and eventually is just like a guide, like, not even really a guide sometimes, like just sometimes just states the obvious is not helpful whatsoever. And I'm like, what's even the point? At the same time, this also goes to Samus's character too, where I was like, why are there Adam nav stations all over this ZDR planet that no one, the Federation, Samus, no one's ever been on it before except the Chozo or whatever. And yet Samus has no problem just like stepping into one of these nav rooms and plugging her arm cannon in, and doesn't at all question, like, I wonder why this nav room would be here. And maybe that wouldn't have brought her to extrapolating that it was the real Adam the whole time, but I would have liked some kind of questioning there, because even at the end of the game, she goes up to the Chozo ship, and the first thing she comes across is an Adam nav room, and she goes right, and she doesn't want to stop, and she doesn't even at all think, I'm like, okay, the nav rooms on ZDR are a little bit weird, but I guess that kind of makes sense. But why would there be an Adam nav room on this Dark Chozo ship that I know is the bad guy's ship, who I know is not Federation aligned? Why would I find an Adam navigation room here? And obviously it's because it's not the real Adam, but like she only realizes it until it's blatantly obvious. And I was kind of hoping that like she would have had some kind of thinking there, and I would have liked the real Adam to show up a little more. That's another reason I don't like that there's no resolution to the game. Because if that wasn't the real Adam the whole time, except the beginning, it would have been nice to, at the end of the game, have Samus talk to the real Adam again. And Adam be like, whoa, like, what happened? Or, go into what happened, or blah, blah. Reflect a little bit on the events of the game a little bit there. Like you kind of have at the end of Fusion. And that doesn't happen at all. So I'm like, was it the real Adam? Was it not? Like, was it just Adam being weird? I don't know. And I guess it wasn't. But, like, I think if it was a little more explicit and expounded upon at the beginning and end, and I don't know. I guess the execution was fine, but I still wanted the real Adam through the game, because I wanted, again, more follow-up from what happened in Fusion. But maybe, I guess, they just didn't feel like there was much more meat on the bone. I don't know.
Yeah, I wasn't disappointed that we didn't get the real Adam necessarily. I actually thought like while I was playing the game and I thought that that was the real Adam, I was like, this is pretty much exactly how I want Adam to be used. Actually, where it's just like quick, quiet bursts of information or story and like move on. Like in Fusion, it was excessive, where in Dread it was like very, very minimal. So like that was how I wanted Adam to be used. I can understand disappointment at not seeing Adam really at all, other than the opening cutscene. Um, I actually I don't really take issue with there being like nav stations on ZDR either. Like I feel like at that point you should just be like, well, why are there save stations on ZDR
Yeah,
too?
but
like,
save stations
to
are,
me it doesn't really matter.
I guess, but like, I mean, okay, fine, but that's what I'm saying. Like, if they're on ZDR, okay, that's one thing because Samus going to ZDR. She doesn't know if it's like inherently a bad place or whatever, right? Like, save stations could be anywhere. Like, I guess like the nav stations could be anywhere. But when she goes on the Chozo ship, like when clearly it's the bad guys, the villain's spot, right? There should be no reason for there being a nav station in there. Like, no good reason. Like, I'll forgive them being on ZDR, fine. Because, yeah, okay, then why is anything in any particular planet? But all those planets are mostly, you know, they were either neutral and then converted to, like, maybe a bad guy's lair or whatever. But, like, even in Fusion, you don't go somewhere where, like, there's a nav room where there's clearly a bad guy occupying it, right? Like, even save stations are outside the boss's room. So, like, I don't know. Like, the nav room showing up in the Chozo ship for me, I was like, what? Why? And at least Samus should have some hesitation and be like, wait a second. Like, there's no way this is legit. If it's on the bad guy's ship, I shouldn't be touching anything. And yet she's just like, oh, I'm plugging right in. Screw it. Like, what if she got, like, a virus? What if they could have easily defeated Samus right there. Instead of Raven Beak playing, like, this weird, like, oh, I'm not actually Adam, he could have, like, I don't know, injected, like, a virus into her arm cannon and, like, shut down her power suit and then just, like, easily body her. But no, like, that doesn't happen. I don't know why. But, yeah, I don't know. I guess that's maybe a bit nitpicky, but I would have liked the real Adam, and I would have liked that stuff to maybe make a bit more sense.
I feel like that's nitpicky, but I do think that maybe there should have been you know, another moment or two that kind of made you a little bit more sus of Adam, because I thought it was him like the whole time, man. Like I really did.
Yeah, I did
and
too.
then at the end, I was just like, oh, Adam, this evil bastard. And actually, when he said, "When I let you live," I actually for a second thought he was talking about the BSL and not the encounter at the beginning of the game.
Dude, that's another thing for me is that when it was like Adam appearing to be bad and like, oh, I shouldn't have let you live, or like you're lucky I let you live, I was like, okay, maybe like Adam was really on the bad guy side the whole time. Maybe we're actually getting a little more of that Sus Federation stuff. I was like, okay, like that was I actually did get excited for that a little bit, and then it ended up being Raven Beak. I'm like, oh, okay, like that's also cool, I guess. I don't know, but yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Let's quickly talk about the Chozo, or not the Chozo necessarily, but the quiet robe scene in Samus. I thought that scene was fantastic. I know that you didn't love it. We were arguing about this earlier today.
Yeah.
But I think that for what it was, I think that it was like really good. Like Samus is shocked to see a living Chozo. She's not maybe as emotive as you might have liked. There's that Kotaku article that's going around like kind of dogging on her for being emotionless and stuff like that, which I can understand their premise, but it's not that she doesn't show emotion, it's that the presentation and the way that she does is very subtle, very quiet. And so I know that we were talking about the scene earlier today. I really liked it. I thought that her response was appropriate, particularly because she's on this hostile planet on mission where everything is trying to kill her. She does drop her guard. She does give that kind of lingering glance towards Quiet Robe after he is murdered by the Chozo robot.
Yeah.
So I like that whole thing. Actually, the thing that stuck out to me the most about Quiet Robe was at the end of the game when you see his X version on Samus' ship, and he just like lets himself become an X. And he's like, I don't know if he killed himself or what, or just like let his spirit go, but his X reverts Samus back into regular form.
Yeah.
And I was just like, okay, I didn't really question that. That was fine enough for me. So I liked Quiet Robe. I liked that scene. I liked the ending. I thought that he was a great addition to the story.
Yeah. The ending was weird. My interpretation was that he overcame the X like or like somehow part of his like consciousness was still in the X Parasite copy, and he was able to like somehow reach through and overcome like the X Parasite. I don't know. I was like, okay, like that's kind of my biggest issue with that is that they didn't let us keep the Metroid suit. The game should have ended with Samus in the Metroid suit. They should have just had Quiet Beak, turn the ship on himself instead of having Samus do it by getting rid of her Metroid suit. When they got rid of the Metroid suit, I was like, oh, come on, man. Like, it would have been so sick if the next game started with Metroid in that Samus suit. Like, that would have been sick. Anyway.
I love that you keep calling him Quiet Beak.
What is it? What did I call him? Quiet Beak? Whatever.
Quiet Beak.
Quiet Robe.
Quiet Robe.
Well,
Come on.
whatever. This game's names suck, man. They're all interchangeable. The areas are like Fernia, Burnia, Murnia, and Cronia, and Chozo or Range Rover and Quiet Robe, and I don't know. I don't remember.
Well, you got Quiet Robe right there.
Quiet Robe.
No, I agree. I would have loved to keep the Metroid suit. And again, we'll talk about this more when we do our episode about what we think Metroid 6 could be, but I'm not entirely sure that we're done with that.
No, I don't
suit.
think we are
I think
either.
that it's coming back.
That's definitely a bit nitpicky. I think my biggest issue with this was, I guess I felt more shocked that Samus was seeing the Chozo for the first time. And I'm counting for the first time in terms of talking to Quiet Robe. Because, like, obviously it's a Chozo that attacks her the first time, but it's an unknown assailant, right? She doesn't talk to it or anything, really. It, like, chokes her out. Like, this is the first time she's really conversing and, like, meeting face-to-face, really, in, like, a actual, like, introductory environment with a Chozo in a long time. And I guess, like, she's shocked, but I didn't feel like... And she's definitely not emotionless in this game. That's just completely wrong. Like, there are multiple times where she's very clearly angry. Like, that's objectively true. Like, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. She's very clearly angry multiple times throughout the game. But she's never reflective, and I don't know. It doesn't seem like she has a lot of critical thinking. She's kind of just holding forward and pressing W or left mouse click or A. In this scene, it did feel like I wanted more of an emotional reaction. Not maybe an emotional, but like some more of a reaction, I guess. Like I said, I felt like I reacted more to seeing this Chozo talk to her the first time than she did. Like, as far as I'm concerned, this is like seeing a family member, like a mother or father, for the first time in like 20 years. And I would have expected a bit more of a reaction from her than like widening her eyes and like lowering her guard a little bit. Like, I don't need her to like jump on them and into their arms and hug them to death, but like I would have expected like a little more of a physical and maybe, emotional reaction to what she was seeing. Like, this is the first time she's hearing a Chozo speak in forever long, let alone even seeing one. And like that's like the music was very subtle. Her reaction was very subtle. I'm like, this should be like, there's nothing wrong with having a subtle Samus in a lot of her stuff, but like throughout the game, she has no problem like being badass and swaggy and like overly like confident in battles. But then she's like really subdued in this like really impactful moment. I felt like that's not very congruent with one another. Like, why wouldn't she also be, emotion and like very on her sleeve in that moment too? I don't know. I expected a lot more. I wanted the moment to really carry a lot more weight. Like, the music isn't like, it's so subdued. Like, it's shot just like two camera angles side to side.
No, the music is, they've got like the lower Brinstar theme going.
I don't know.
They transition to Samus's theme. It's so good.
It didn't feel like a really massive moment like it should have been. Even her dialogue with the Chozo, like her one or two lines.
Oh, hold on.
Wait.
Before you go there.
All right. Well, let me just. All right, I guess. Okay, go ahead.
No. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that like her one line that she had, she's just like, all right, yeah, I'll do it, or whatever. She's like, that's essentially what she says. Like, okay, I'll do it. Like, I'm on it. Like, I'm like, she doesn't like. She's talking like as if she's talking to anybody else. I don't know. I didn't feel like she was talking to a Chozo for the first time. I did like, however, that she spoke in Chozo. That was really cool, and I thought I was like, oh wow, that was really awesome. But
that moment, I popped. I actually cheered out loud when that happened, when she spoke in Chozo, and like I disagree. The way that she spoke to Quiet Robe, first of all, that she's speaking in the Chozo language showed me respect and adoration for this Chozo. And maybe that was the only way, like, maybe he doesn't know English or whatever, but like the fact that she did that, I was just like, this is awesome. That she spoke, like, when she spoke, the fact that she doesn't speak all the time, like when she does, it's impactful. It was awesome. I thought that this was like so awesome, and like I can understand your point where like maybe she's a bit more subdued than you would have liked. I don't know. I felt like it was appropriate. Like, other than running up and hugging, I don't know. maybe what way that she could have presented a more, you know, gratuitous state towards this Chozo. You know, we kind of said in that Kotaku article said like, you know, this Chozo is like Samus seeing her parents, but really that's not exactly true. Like, this is probably the first time that she's ever met Quiet Robe.
No,
even
I mean,
though
it's not
seeing a member
literally.
of the Chozo race is a big deal.
It's
not
like seeing a family
she-
member, you know? It's like, imagine you never saw any of your family, right? None of your extended family, no brothers, sisters, mother, father, nothing. You didn't see any family members for 2 decades, and then you finally run into like your uncle at the grocery store. You go a little nuts, or you'd be like, "Whoa, is that actually like?" You'd either be so.
No, if I'm Samus and I'm staying consistent with the character that we've built and that we've projected, I think that the response was appropriate.
I don't think that's out of character at all. Like, she could still be subdued and a badass, but also have a very emotional reaction to seeing a person she's never seen that's part of a group that she hasn't seen in forever. Like, that doesn't, like, I don't think those are contradictory at all. She can't, you know, she could still be excited and very emotional and reactive while also still being a badass otherwise and subdued otherwise. But this is the moment where she shouldn't have been subdued as far as I'm concerned. She could be subdued at other moments.
What did you want her to do?
I mean, she could have been more stunned. Maybe a little more like pause before she actually responded. Maybe like staggering back a little bit, or maybe getting closer and be like, whoa, am I actually like seeing what I'm seeing? She just like opens her eyes a little bit wider. Like, she barely moves. Like, she doesn't really do anything. She
she's
puts her
literally
arm
in shock looking at this Chozo. She's on the ground, about to be like eaten alive by the EMMI. She slowly lowers her arm cannon, stands up, speaks in the Chozo language.
That's
great.
I thought it was such a moment for like that was a moment that like I felt like had so much build up throughout all this time of playing Metroid games, and then kind of comes and goes. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, it wasn't like the grand meeting I was really expecting. Like, the most you have is like that pan up from the ground on Old Rope or Quiet Rope, whatever his name is, and that was cool. That was good. But then the rest of it just didn't really do anything for me. I was like, I really wanted a lot more of an impactful moment. I wanted more of a reaction. I don't know. I think there was a lot more they could have done. It didn't really feel like it had the weight that I was expecting from such a really important moment in the entire series, let alone the game.
I disagree. I thought that it was awesome. I think that that's probably the best scene in the entire game. Actually,
No way!
When she says in Chozo, "I'll end this once and for all." That was so awesome. It was so.
That's a fine line. I just wish there was a little more than that. Like, if she had a little more of a reaction and then that was her last line, I'd be like, "Oh yeah, let's do it." But that was like her only line. I'm like, okay, like that's all you have to say here.
I don't know, man. I don't think we needed her to like jump up and bear hug Quiet.
But there's the ground. There's a middle ground there.
We're
man.
Long.
Hey man, I waited 20 years to talk about this game. All right, I'm gonna talk about it. Let's move on.
Okay, let's talk about the Emmys. I want to talk about the Emmys.
Okay.
I loved that their true purpose was to get the DNA from Samus, as we thought that it would. We kind of speculated before that we probably thought that they were trying to extract her Metroid DNA. That turned out to be true, but that was one of those instances where I feel like even if it was predictable, it made sense, and therefore I liked it. I thought that they... I just thought that they were like a really cool, intimidating enemy, and this kind of veers into like the gameplay aspect as well. But I really do. I think that they did add a lot to the story. I do think that there's meat left on the bone to really kind of see, like, is the Galactic Federation mass producing these to take out Samus? So like, is Samus going to have to get like, you know, more Metroids or something in order to take out this new army of okay, I know I'm kind of going into my Metroid 6 ideas, but like I feel like that story to me is very exciting, and I hope that we see more of the Emmys in the future, because I think that there's more there. Because like, really, you only see, like, there are 7 Emmys, but 2 of them are like immediately destroyed, one at the beginning, one at the end, so like you really only have confrontation with 5 of them. So I think that there's a lot more there to really chew on. So I really love them, and I hope that we see them again. I love them as a plot device. I love them as a gameplay mechanic.
Yeah, I think the incorporation of the Emmys was really cool. I love that they were able to create an enemy that, you know, was really strong in its own, but also didn't make it seem like Samus wasn't strong either. Like, Samus is still very clearly a strong individual, but the Emmys are even more so. Some of my favorite parts of this game are like, you know, oh my god, I gotta get away, and like getting, like, fighting the Emmys, or some of the best boss fights in and of themselves in the entire Metroid series. So I think the EMMIs are really cool. I think the idea of, sending the EMMIs, to a planet to take care of, a really hostile threat makes sense. Obviously, the Federation is capable of creating all sorts of crazy and strong technology. And that's why I wish we saw more of that in this game. But I think in this manner, like, it worked out really well. Them eventually becoming, a threat that, and gets entangled with the Chozo threat, and the X threat as well works really well. And I think the pacing for the most part is solid. Like, yeah, you kind of have like two EMMIs that aren't really like a major threat for a sustained portion of the time, and like a couple you kind of like run through quickly. So pacing wise, it's a bit off, but I really love the EMMIs. The EMMIs are such an awesome idea. They are really cool. I mean, the fact that like Ridley isn't even in this game and we haven't even mentioned that, I don't think I've even brought it up. Like, this game has so many good bosses and awesome new enemies that like I didn't need Ridley to show up. And the EMMIs are definitely part of that. Like, the EMMIs are such a cool idea. I agree that they can definitely expound on them more. And I thought we'd get more of that in Dread. Like, there's that one EMMI room that looks like there's a massive something being built in the background. And while we do get like a background kind of experiment eventually becoming a boss in the game, I was really expecting something from that to happen. Like that really big machine they were building in one of the EMMI zones. But the EMMIs overall, I think, are an awesome boss. They're really cool. I loved how there were different types and colors that all had different, abilities you had to deal with, and it wasn't just like the same EMMI over and over. I liked how the EMMI zones were big and branched around and were a core part of the area that you had to deal with and go through multiple times. I like how it, was a really natural and awesome evolution from the SAX mechanic from Fusion. Overall, one of the game's strongest points, and I think story-wise worked out really well because it like was, a consistent thing that you had to work on. You knew you had to get to, the central unit to deal with, get the Omega Cannon blaster, and which is another issue of continuity. I guess maybe I'll mention later, but not sure if that's actually meant to be the one from Hunters or not. I don't think they cared, or even I don't know if they even played Hunters.
I don't think they care.
I know.
I don't think.
I guess they don't. But I mean, it would have been nice. That's one thing about Metroid is I like the continuity, and this game doesn't really have a lot of that continuity. That's very nitpicky. Like, who cares about that? But it would have been nice to be like, oh, maybe it was the Omega Cannon from Hunters, or maybe just name it something else, or the fact that the Various suit doesn't cover you from the cold in this game when it does in previous games. But I guess you could chalk that up to the whole DNA stuff. I don't know. Overall, though, the EMMIs are one of the very, very much, like, plot-wise, gameplay-wise, one of the shining parts of the game for sure.
Yeah, and I really do hope that they come back.
I agree.
One thing that we were talking about, like, it was fairly certainly going to happen, and if you would have asked me, I would have bet money on it. Actually, was that like some kind of EMMI Ridley was going to show up, and that didn't happen. And actually, this is actually the first time I'm thinking about that, and obviously it wasn't that big of a deal, but. Looking back, like, yeah, I guess I am a little bit surprised that didn't happen, but they were just certainly strong enough to make that omission not really matter much in the end. So, yeah, I guess that just really goes to show how good the EMMIs were here. Couple other things that will wrap it up. I don't really have much more to talk about the Metroid suit, other than just
awesome.
It was like freaking awesome.
Yeah, I love that.
Oh my god, it was awesome.
I hope we get that again.
So good.
Yeah, it's such a cool design. I mean, it's almost like Dark Samus looking. Like it was. It's like that is such a cool design. I mean, as much as I really wish they did this stuff in this game, I can see that maybe in the next game they're like, okay, Samus has the ability to do this Metroid suit thing and this Hyper Beam thing. Maybe the Federation's like, maybe we finally have to crack down on this. I don't know. I still don't think it would make a ton of sense, but I would love to see the Metroid suit come around again. The Hyper Beam comes and goes throughout the series and shows up in all different kinds of forms, but this suit is so awesome. And I know we talked about this before the game came out, or even on our first impressions, where like I was kind of hoping there was, at least one more suit maybe to get at the end. And I do wish this game kind of had more original suits. Like the Metroid suit is really sick, but like other than that, like we get like, the Gravity suit, the Various suit, like we've seen that before. I kind of like how, like, in other Metroid games, especially the Prime games, they really kind of go out of their way to make some really unique designs. In Dread, we get that, but only at the end of the game, very end of the game, really. Still, that sequence is sick.
On that note, though, I feel like the white in the suit has got to stay. That was so slick.
Yeah.
My God. I wish that you actually just got to keep the Dread suit with the blue and the white and the red. Like, that was the best suit.
I wish you still had
get rid of it fairly quickly.
The arm blades. Like, that's another thing this game doesn't at all explain why her suit looks different. Like, I know they said it in the Metroid reports, but, like, they don't mention it at all in this game. Like, her suit's just different. And I think it would have made a lot more sense if the beginning of the game, she still had her fusion suit, and then she's knocked out. She gets, beaten by Raven Beak, and then for some reason, the Metroid DNA being activated slowly, like, starts making her suit change, or I don't know, she wakes up and the suit's now different, something like that. Like, I don't know. I would have liked to have seen the return of the actual fusion suit and the arm blades. Those are really cool. But the new suit design is also awesome.
That didn't bother me, actually. I mean, she doesn't even have her fusion suit at the end of Fusion.
No,
right?
yes, she does. Yes, she does.
No, she doesn't.
Yes,
she
does.
absorbed the SAX core.
Yeah, and then she gets the Omega suit, which is the fusion suit, but yellow and orange. It's the fusion suit still. At the end of the game, she's still in her fusion suit.
It's not the fusion suit as I guess maybe I was picturing it, but
it's the Omega suit. But at the beginning of Dread, she doesn't have that on either. She has the Dread suit on, which is a different color too.
Yeah, that part didn't bother me, but I guess I can maybe
it's continuity.
See that. You're a fan of the fusion suit, though.
Yes, I am.
But yeah, this Metroid suit, I really do think that it's going to come back and play a significant role in Metroid 6.
I hope so.
And I do think that could be the reason why the Galactic Federation story maybe was put on hold for this entry, to like really kind of make Samus a public enemy, if you will, by saying like, we have a walking, talking Metroid who is also happens to be the galaxy's most fearsome warrior. So like, we got to take her out. And that's kind of how they
maybe
sway public opinion.
Yeah,
Who knows?
Maybe
Who
so.
knows? But yeah, that Metroid suit was awesome. Okay, let's again really quick talking about the X. I got to admit, I was surprised to actually see the X come back. I wasn't expecting that. Were you?
I wasn't either. I popped off for that, man. I was so happy to see the X come back. When Samus lets the X like out of that building and they start flying out into the planet, I was like, yes! Oh my god, we're actually gonna have some X being all over the place. And then you follow up with that, with them actually being all over the place, and they're acting exactly as they did in Fusion. I was like, I popped off. I popped off for that. I popped off for the Core X appearing. I thought that was so sick. I loved this. I think the X coming back like was such a good idea. It looks awesome. It made sense. Like, it was a great depiction. Like, it's so crazy seeing them come back after 19 years and seeing them in like 3D like that. Really awesome. I love that. And that is one of the things like maintained from Fusion, where I was like, and the Fusion fan in me, I love that. They hit like the mark on that 100%. That whole sequence, I think, of Samus kind of like unveiling more of the X on the planet was one of my favorite parts of the game, actually.
Yeah, I thought that it was pretty cool, and especially when the Core X showed up, I was like, dude, this is pretty awesome.
So good.
That was great. I don't know what I was expecting. I wasn't expecting them to like literally show up. I thought that they were just gonna kind of bait us with that footage, and I didn't actually think that it would be real. So when it was real, and then like, not only was it real, but it completely replaced every single enemy in the game, I was just like, dude, this is cool.
I love that.
And when I was playing it first, I was kind of looking to see if the X did like what they do in Fusion, where like you can destroy one, but then it'll reform into something else. And they do that. Yep. And I was watching out for it at first and didn't see a ton of it, but the more and more I played, the more that the X do reform and turn into stronger enemies. So I thought that was really cool as well. So I was just like, damn, I wasn't expecting this. And like, I was pleasantly surprised that happened. And worth noting as well, when you finally defeat Raven Beak at the end, there is a purple X that we have never seen before. I think every other X has either been yellow or green or red, but not purple. So maybe that one does some crazy funky stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, that was cool. I really love this. This was so sick. Yeah, the reforming, like, it's literally like the X, like from Fusion to a T. And this game is really good at like having like the creative bosses and multiple phases. And then when the X are introduced, like some of the bosses, obviously they're in X parasites now and X clones, and they have like different boss phases. Like the one Chozo warrior with like the staff and shield, you get like its head opens up and it starts blasting like X ink or sludge or whatever at you from the wall. And I'm like, oh, this is awesome. Like the stuff like that is when like Dread is firing all cylinders. Like, so awesome when they mix the X parasites and the Chozo together and like blasting them together in this really crazy situation. Really, really awesome. Like, that is one of the best parts of this game. So I love that they brought the X back. That was a great way to like kind of merge these two major parts of of the Metroid series together in a way. Because even though obviously the Chozo and X Parasites have been intrinsically kind of, connected because of the Metroids, and because of Samus Returns too, in a way we haven't seen like that direct actual witnessing of them kind of coming together in the games. So I really love that, and that was an awesome kind of evolution of those two bits of the story we've been working on throughout the games. Overall, I really love that they added them, and yeah, they hit the nail on the head with bringing the X into this.
I think for me, aside from a remake of Fusion, which I think that we're gonna get, but I think for me, I'm probably ready for the X to. This was a fitting end for the X for me.
I agree.
I don't think that they need to come back.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think at this point, the X have had two really good appearances. I mean, at one point, honestly, I thought the SAX was about to show up. That I would have lost my mind if we got a rematch. So I think that's maybe the only reason I'd want to see the X come back is maybe fight the SAX one more time. Fighting the SAX in this game would have been like if they did that as like kind of this game's Proteus Ridley, and like kind of threw that in as like a little boss you didn't expect before you fought Raven Beak or something, even though Proteus Ridley happens at the end of that game. I don't know. It would have been a nice little throwback, but yeah.
No, I want to fight the SAX in the Metroid suit at the end of the game, and like maybe he's got some.
That would have been sick. Actually, yeah, you're right. That's what should have happened. Like maybe there's the resolution, and then like, or maybe even before that, yeah, just she gets the Metroid suit and has to take on the SAX at the end. Oh, that's okay. That would have been sick.
Or let's transition to the last thing that I want to talk about here before we get out of here. Or Kraid X. God, that would have been good.
Dude, I thought that was going to happen when the experimental boss comes back, right? The one that's in the background and shows up as an X Parasite.
Yeah, I did too. I thought Kraid X was coming back.
I thought it was Kraid X. I would have been like, yo, okay. Because honestly, again, we talked about how Ridley isn't in this game. I think Kraid being the kind of comeback boss was a perfect choice for this. And I think it would have been sick if we got Kraid X as we got Ridley X too. So even though we did get, Corpius X, that's fine. I think that boss fight was absolutely awesome and super sick. But yeah, if it was Kraid X or SAX, something like that, that would have been the perfect piece de resistance for that. But I think that's the only reason I would have wanted the X Parasites to show up again, is maybe getting the SAX rematch or maybe the Kraid X. But otherwise, yes, I agree. I think this is a fine end point for the X Parasites at this point.
So I did want to talk about Kraid for a second. When I went in, I kind of was just like, I hope that they give us an explanation for why Kraid is there and bound and tied up and stuff like that. They didn't do that, but when I got into it, I was also just like, I don't really care. I'm glad the Kraid's here. This is cool.
I'm with you. Again, I think that's a part of the game where sure, I could be oh, continuity, why is he here? I think there are way more other issues with this game in terms of continuity or following through that this probably isn't at the top of the list of things that need to be explained. I would have liked an explanation, because that is something that could have been a single line or whatever. Why is Kraid there tied up or chained up, whatever? Is that the actual Kraid? Is it a Kraid clone? I don't even think we learned that, even though it probably is a Kraid clone. But we didn't learn that at all. And why Kraid specifically? Mm-hmm. Why would they go out of their way to make an immobile lizard again, or have it in the first? I don't. Again, not something that needs to be explained, because it's it's a cool boss fight. It's great to see Kraid again. That's awesome. If it happened in Metroid Prime 4 where they brought back Kraid and as Meta Kraid, I've been oh, that's awesome. I wouldn't have thought about it. So even though you could easily be well, why would they bring Kraid back and make a Meta Kraid? That's dumb. So I think it's fine in this game. I think it's really cool. One of the best boss fights in the game, I think. Actually, it was really fun, and I think it's a really awesome Kraid boss fight. But
as much as I love Kraid, I don't know.
Really?
Actually, we'll just save it, because we'll do an entire episode on the bosses.
I really like the Kraid. I like the Kraid. Yeah, I think. Well, I mean, maybe it wasn't the best of this game, just because this game has so many awesome bosses. So maybe I'll take that back. Maybe it wasn't one of the best ones, just because there's so many great ones. They outshine.
It was awesome, though. You're definitely right.
Yeah, so I'll say that. It may not have been the top one, but it's certainly a great one overall. But yeah, I would have liked a little, there's so many things in this game that just aren't explained or just kind of moved on. I'm why is Kraid there? I guess it's not a big deal. It's awesome, but why? I don't know.
Yeah, I thought that I would be more bothered by it than I was leading up to this. I was like, I feel like it's going to be weird if they don't tell us why Kraid is there. But then, yeah, while I was actually doing it and I was fighting him, I was like, I don't care. This just feels cool to fight Kraid for like the first time since Super Metroid. I guess you fight him in Zero Mission, but you know what I mean. But yeah, I love that. And I really loved the story of Metroid Dread overall. I know that it had a few inconsistencies, particularly with the Galactic Federation. That's probably the biggest critique that I think I would have, and certainly that you would have. And I can understand that. It certainly didn't ruin the experience for me.
No, certainly not.
But I can understand where it certainly detracts for other people. I do, I remember someone saying that like we shouldn't have expected resolution to the Galactic Federation plotline in this game, and I think that we should have. I think that we were right to expect some acknowledgement, and we didn't get that. So I do think that that's a very fair criticism, and I don't agree with you about the Samus, but the Samus characterization, showing emotion, stuff like that. But I can also understand at least that perspective as well.
I would have liked some reflection.
I do think that there are some things that you can point at that were maybe a little bit I don't know, lacking. But yeah, I think for me, for the most part here, the narrative with like the Metroid DNA and the Chozo and the story that they did tell versus the story that we wanted them to tell, I really loved it.
Yeah, the Samus thing is, at the end of the day, it wasn't other M Samus. Like, Samus is awesome in this game. Like, she's so badass, she's really cool. But I would have liked, one of the things I loved about Fusion is that she's reflective. She's, critically thinking throughout the game. She questions things. She defies orders, all of that. And she speaks her mind. And in this game, she doesn't do that at all, which, like, is fine. But coming from Fusion, I did expect that because she was doing that previously. If she wasn't doing that previously, then I think it would be fine in Dread, Like, in Super, she doesn't do that, whatever. But Fusion, she started to do it, so I expected more of that in this game. I would have liked a little more critical thinking instead of her just kind of mashing aim, like, all right, I'll do it, let's do it. Sticking your arm cannon to everything without thinking. No hesitation on taking the mission. None of that stuff. She's never reflective. We never once kind of ever get any kind of reflection on anything that's happening in this game. And one of the things I liked about Fusion was we did get those moments where Samus thought about what was happening and questioned it and was like, like, what should I really do here? And would, yelled at Adam at some points. In this game, like, we don't get any of that. I would have liked a little more of that. Overall, I would say, I think the story is what really keeps me from saying this. The music too, but, like, this game, the gameplay of this game is so awesome. I'm willing to kind of overlook most of that. But a big reason why I wanted this game in the first place, as I said at the beginning, was that expected follow-up, and we didn't get that. So I don't think this is the full package game for me. And which is, it's hard because I think gameplay-wise is the best 2D Metroid, hands down. But it didn't have that story part that I really, really wanted from this. And I think overall people are going to be okay with that. Maybe people didn't have the same expectation as me overall, and I think people were just, excited for a new 2D Metroid, and they got that. And it's an exceptional game. But there are some continuity and story issues, a lot of stuff that's not explained, a lot of stuff that I would have liked to be a bit more explicit, considering they were in the previous game. I think the characterization reactions could have been stronger. But a lot of the standalone elements of the story, like the Chozo and the X and the ZDR stuff and Raven Beak, overall work really well in this game, and I think those additions are really good.
All right, well, there we go. We have gotten to the end of our story review. Of course, we're not done talking about the story, talking about Metroid Dread. We're going to be talking about Arteria next week. We're going to be talking about the bosses. We're going to be talking about the music. We have got like an action-packed couple of weeks, not to mention our ideas for Metroid 6. And of course, we're going to take some of your questions and answer them as well. These next few weeks are going to be just bustling, and I wouldn't have it any other way, so I'm really looking forward to this. We should also give a quick shout-out to user Herb at Herbs_2. Congrats, dude. You won a copy of Metroid Dread. I'll slide into your DMs and we'll get you all fixed up. But yeah, congratulations, and thank you to everyone that followed and retweeted, and really love that we can spread the Metroid love out there for everybody. So yeah, that's really cool. All right, well, we are going to get out of here. Of course, we want to encourage everybody to check us out over on Twitter at Omega Metroid Pod, at Spateri316, and at DACCD_. And check us out over on Podbean, iTunes, wherever you get your podcast. Like and subscribe. Tell that new Metroid fan in your life who's played Dread for the first time and is like, damn, this Metroid series is awesome. Tell them about the Omega Metroid podcast, and that is where they can go to level up their love for this series. Until next week, everybody, we will see you then.